Good evening, guys. Today is day 12 of this vlog project. And I gotta say, it's been a lot of fun so far. I think it has helped keep me on track. It's gotten me excited about learning some of the topics I'm already interested in, but that it's easy to put off and think, oh, I'll invest time into focusing my brain on this later. I'm just going to coast through life. I'm going to coast through day to day. But doing this project, as well as doing some other social media efforts, has forced me to stay on track with some of these topics. Again, whether it's politics and economics, whether it's fitness and jiu-jitsu, or whether it's business. And these are topics that I'm interested in, that I participate in to some degree across the board, kind of, sort of. So I've found that even in just the past 2 weeks of doing this, 12 days, it's crazy to think that it's been that many already. Feels like we're just getting started. Feels like I've already learned a fair amount. Again, not from just the act of spewing whatever is on the top of my brain onto the recording, but the in-between time where I maybe put out a thought and then I get some feedback and I think, wow, maybe I didn't know that as well as I thought I did. Let me learn some more. Let me study some more. Or to try and keep this interesting and to be able to bring something to the table, trying to do some self-study outside of the actual recording of the vlog. So all that being said, oh geez, I thought there was maybe one point that I was going to make tonight, and now it is eluding me. Just was going to do a sort of a general update on what's happening, how today went, what's on the agenda for tomorrow, so that we can all keep track of what's going on. So first things first, tomorrow morning is pretty exciting. I have day 2 of the Mike Menser bodybuilding lifting program. Tomorrow is shoulders and arms. I did day 1. I think I recorded a little clip right afterwards. So day 1 of the lifting program is on there. Day 2 is tomorrow. I've definitely felt a little taxed all week from having done a decent workout last week. Legs on Monday, and then Tuesday night no-gi jiu-jitsu, Wednesday night wrestling. Typically I do Thursday no-gi jiu-jitsu, but I was feeling pretty taxed, and I worked in the field today. So typically I just ride a desk, and I'm more of a admin support, customer service rep / marketing / administrative type duties. And today was needed in the field, get a couple of punch list things done. And so already feeling a little taxed, then on my feet all day, kind of working away. And not to mention that once the business hours ended, I got home and had to catch up on my administrative duties that I kind of set to the side while I was out in the field, which is typically the case, especially if I'm working alone. 100% of the time. That's the only time that that my phone dies, that the whole world is trying to get a hold of me, that I can't get any service. This is only when I'm working alone. It's never when I'm working in the field, but I have someone with me, either helping me out or they're leading the show and I'm just there to give them a hand. It seems like anytime that's the case, I have plenty of mental and physical space to be able to step offline, take a couple of phone calls if needed, etc., etc., etc. But days where I'm out in the field alone and I got my hands full of tools and I'm trying to troubleshoot whatever task that's right in front of me, the phone rings off the hook. And or at least it feels that way. And so I recognize that if I were to take while I'm out in the field, if I were to take every call, look at every email, etc., probably wouldn't get any work done. So anyhow, that is kind of an update on how today went. I already vented a little bit to my lady on this went well, this didn't go so well, so I'll spare you guys. But yeah, so that's how today went. That's what's on the agenda for tomorrow morning. Then more work stuff. And then this weekend is a big weekend. Today being July 1st, we are just 3 ways away. 3 days away from July 4th, the day on which we celebrate our independence as a country, which has gained new meaning for me in this last year. Previous years, or maybe even 1 year ago specifically, I remember a very interesting moment where a coworker of mine had made some kind of not denigrating is not the right word. Maybe disparaging. We'll go with that. Talking down on the country that we live in. And I don't blame this individual by any means. This is not a bad mouth of that person. But the weird parts of my brain that started to fire was that how normal it is to speak badly of our own country, right? And how, especially, and this may not be the case all over, but especially in Seattle, in the area and the culture that I grew up in, it seems almost kind of culturally not supported, but encouraged to speak badly about the states. And I it's so ingrained, or was so ingrained in my way of thinking, that I noticed that it was almost embedded into some assumptions I would make, or how different conversations that I would have with peers, and that it was a normal thing to just bash the country. And I'm trying to think of some good examples, but there was never any sense of, taking pride or talking about the good aspects of the country that we live in, which I don't ever think that blind, misguided patriotism is ever an admirable thing either, to ignore the faults of anything and this is the best thing since sliced bread, but to ignore the facts. That being said, it seemed like I grew up in such a way, like even like one small thing is when you ask people, and this may be getting a little in the weeds here, but when you would ask people, what are you? Right? That always meant, but someone would say, I'm half German and half whatever. And it's like, what? Your grandparents 4 generations ago, or half German, half Italian. Are you? Your grandparents half 4 generations ago on your mom's side were from Germany, and then who knows, and then you just happen to have an Italian last name, but you don't even know when those ancestors came over the States. And even for myself, we say, oh, I'm half Puerto Rican, half white. But am I? Now and it's only been maybe in the last couple of years that I had this realization that, and actually maybe it was a number of years ago that I started saying, well, I'm a Seattleite. I'm from Seattle. I grew up here. I'm culturally a Seattle type person. I'm from Washington. And then recently, if conversations like this come up, and I like messing with people, and I can't remember the last time it came up where this sort of conversation was happening, and I pointed to the person. I said, "No, you know what you are? You're American." That's weird. Yeah, I don't remember the specific scenario, but again, how atypical is it to hear if someone asks, "Oh, what are you? What ethnicity are you? Whatever," to go, "Oh, I'm American." Right? It's just a weird thing that we don't even do, and I'm the dot I'm connecting is it just seems like there's this weird sort of shame that's promoted or culturally appropriate to be embarrassed or to not be proud of the country that you live in, to hate on it. And to be honest, what's weird is that my transition from not having an appreciation for this country to having one is still through a extremely critical lens, but it's in a different way. Now I appreciate the heritage. I appreciate what historical significance that this country has had and the prosperity that has come from the unique moment in time that it had. And then in the here and the now, I'm extremely critical of where we've gone astray. And I feel like I'm only starting to learn and understand where we are, how we got here, these types of things. So, oh geez, how did I? So I got on a little bit of a tangent, but basically Independence Day is coming up, and so I think it's a good moment to reflect on what has ever been great about this country. Even if you don't appreciate those things today, I think today in the here and the now, you can always appreciate the amount of prosperity that we enjoy in this moment, right? That may not always be the case, but I think a lot of us can say, and I reflect on this sometimes now, that hey, in many other places, geographically in the world, as well as other times historically, if I was just a normal person who was born to just a person in the normal class of people, I would be a peasant or a field hand or a serf or a slave. I mean, you could have been born into any of these scenarios, which are way worse, way worse potentially, or in some scenarios, again, if you get super lucky and you end up in a time or a place where there is freedom, hey, you may not be enjoying the same technology that we enjoy today, right? But compared to many other places and times in history, even if I might argue that our freedoms have diminished over time, you could still argue that we have greater freedom than those other people, right? The medieval serfs, or the slaves in England, or whoever, right? There's been many people who didn't have a whole lot of freedom at all. So all that being said, again, I keep getting off on these tangents. Independence Day's coming up, yes. A good time to reflect again on those positive things, whether it's historically or whether it's in the here and the now. And it's interesting because one book that I picked up this year, it's a series of books, It's the 4-part biography of George Washington. And I got through the first volume, and I'm part of the way through the second one. And the sole reason that I picked up this series was from a talk that Milton Friedman gave, and he described two of the reasons that the U.S. for the period of time that it was from the 1780s to the turn of the 20th century. And he said that there was two events that allowed for this maximum level of freedom, which led to a unprecedented level of prosperity. And he said the number one event was after the Revolutionary War. George Washington had an opportunity to essentially become the king of the United States. But he, for whatever reason, whether it was, I mean, you could just say maybe unique to his character, he declined that opportunity, which then gave room to set up a republic or to set up the system that we've known from that time and had enjoyed for a long period of time, a maximum level of freedom, or a new, it set a new bar for individual freedom. And it was because he didn't take over as king. And the other event that Milton Friedman points out as an event that extended the amount of prosperity or the individual freedom we were able to experience was the state institution failures in the 1830s. And so again, these are both, and he says that the reason that was important was right around that time, a few decades in. So at that point, right, so the 1780s, right, you're about 50 years into the Republic. Apparently, some states started to set up state banks and other state institutions, but around the 1830s, all those institutions failed. There was an economic recession or something along those lines. This is something I need to study more. I, again, am only taking it from this one speech that I heard Milton Friedman give, and he pointed this out as another moment in time where people recognize the ineptitude of government operations, and there again, the public had a massive distrust for the government's ability to do anything, which extended the notion of limited government for another long period of time. Again, until you could probably say the progressive movement, whenever that started. I think Woodrow Wilson would be the first president. I'm not going to embarrass myself by trying to recall a bunch of history that I hardly know at all. But anyway, this year's Independence Day, I feel like, is taking on a bit of a new meaning, or a greater meaning for me. Again, now that I'm trying to learn some of these things, and also it's funny, every step of the way, coming to appreciate as the dots connect, and like one ideal that I've already thrown out there on these videos was the idea that public schools should be abolished. We should give that tax, just don't even tax the citizens for that. Whatever that amount of revenue that's been coming in, just shut off that stream of revenue and allow the free market to take over. A quick caveat on that: some of these kind of radical ideas sound a bit jarring to put into practice, and I could understand someone not being able to make the mental leap from, what do you mean? We have these schools in place. If we just turn things off, you're going to have this big, it's like throwing the brakes on a train that's moving, and you're going to have the train cars kind of piling up on each other. And so the one recommendation that Milton Friedman has made specific to, I think it was tariffs, right? So when he was saying that that we should institute a policy of complete free trade in order to not pull the rug out from under anyone who's depending on the system in the way that it's currently set out. He says about 5 years is all you need. So whatever the current status is, just decrease it by 20% a year, and that way people will be put on notice, hey, that this is decreasing, and it won't be swept out from under them and all in one motion. They would have 5 years to kind of be weaned off of whatever taxpayer money they're benefiting from. And so that principle, I think, can apply pretty much across the board. So if you were going to take a look at the Washington state budget or the individual school district budgets, like one thing that blew my mind was how much money is sent from Olympia to University of Washington and Washington State University alone. And I'm not even going to throw the number out there because I can't remember if it was in the hundreds of millions or in the couldn't be hundreds of billions. What is it? Oh, my phone is recording me right now. I kind of want to pull it up so that I can have it for posterity's sake because state budget Washington University. Let's see, Washington State budget education. Let's see. Okay, so this article is Washington lawmakers announced new $59 billion state budget that boosts public health. Dang, I gotta love that. Boosts public health child care amid COVID-19. This was in April 24th of 2021. Yeah, gotta really concerned for public health. I'm with you guys. It is totally their job to look after our health. That's sarcasm, by the way. Let's see. Also provides $517 million in federal for behavioral something or another. Let's see. Let's see. I'm not seeing it. It was at least in the hundreds of millions of state funding that goes to the two big universities that we have in the state. And the connection I was going to make between all of this is as I'm starting to go down this rabbit hole and try and learn, again, the history of our country and try and learn how the interaction between politics, economics, and the way we live our lives, how all those things interact, it regularly dawns on me. Like even as I'm speaking and I feel weak in the founding of the country, the specifics, right? I feel like I'm having to learn it for the first time by reading this George Washington series. And as I listen to more of these great thinkers later in the history of our country talk about Madison as being a great thinker, I know nothing about the guy. And so connecting that dot to the school system, it regularly occurs to me that, hey, the reason that all of these things I'm so interested in now and have such a thirst for knowledge to pursue these different subjects, the reason that I feel so far behind is I never learned them. I never learned any of it. And so maybe the opportunities to learn it were there in school growing up, Or maybe some of these great minds that I've been listening to were absolutely right, and the socialized school system that we have provides a poor service, and you wind up an adult wanting to know or learn certain things and then feeling like, man, wish I would have learned that when I was a kid. So and I feel like there's a big sentiment of that. You hear people saying, oh, why don't we ever learn how to balance a checkbook or do our taxes? Or it's, you hear people say things like that, and I think it's often, it's a bit of a joke, or people don't take it that serious. But why not? Why not expect that as children our time is going to be spent productively? Why just assume that it makes sense to spend 12 years of our lives just cruising through life? And again, maybe I'm speaking for myself a little bit, but even for people who took school seriously, thinking, well, yeah, you took that seriously, and I'm sure, learned skills, you learned how to learn, you know certain things, but what skills of those transfer over into the real world? And it just seems like there's an amount of acceptance of, yeah, well, school's not, it's not supposed to transfer over to real life. What, school transfer to real life? But why not? Why not expect more of the system that we all unfortunately pay into, and expect more from it, and think of, well, how could we get a superior product? How could we get a system that young people would enter, and then they would come out excited about life and with clear directions, and having been exposed to all sorts of things that they're interested in, and shadowed and apprenticed and tested and experienced real things, as opposed to being stuck in a classroom. So, all that being said, I'm excited for this 4th of July, and I'm excited for what the last year has brought in the way of some new compartments of my brain, as little seeds being planted to open up new compartments of my brain. And I appreciate you all tagging along for the ride, as well as this vlog project. I thought before I hit record, wow, 12. I looked back and counted the days. Wow, it's been 12 days. Wow, that's a lot. Well, no, not really. And I thought, okay, well, when will I know if this is a productive use of my time? And that's why I think I'm one to justify my actions. I threw out, hey, it's forcing me to learn, it's forcing me to think, it's keeping me accountable to some of the hobbies that I say I enjoy, et cetera, et cetera. And there's also kind of the Gary Vee aspect, right? That I might hope to build a community or build an interaction with people that I would then get to put, again, these thoughts and ideas out there, and the internet world, or just people would exist that have, whether it's similar interests or opposing viewpoints, or this or that it would start to come back at me. And so contemplating, okay, well, how long should I beat my head against this wall before knowing whether I'm on the right track, or if there's another path that's worthwhile? And I think, given the Gary Vee model, he says, people he recommends to take these different actions to, again, start to pursue their interests in life, they'll come back at him and say, oh, Gary, your advice didn't work, et cetera, et cetera. And he goes, well, how long did you try? Well, okay, I tried for 3 weeks. Well, okay, you did it for 3 weeks, and now you expect for anybody to care, right? So, maybe by the 90-day mark, or the 6-month mark, or maybe the 1-year mark, if by the 1-year mark nobody cares what I have to say, then maybe I'll shut down the project. But maybe out of spite and out of stubbornness at that point, maybe I won't. Maybe just to punish people and make them pay for not paying attention, I'm just going to continue to flood the internet with these thoughts and words. So this was supposed to be a relatively short episode, and there you go. I've rambled on and on for 30 minutes expressing my talent of taking absolutely nothing and turning it into a very long-winded monologue. With that, I will bid you good evening. We'll see y'all tomorrow.